and my opponent made the crucial mistake here with knight d2. And this was my chance in the game. Could I capitalize on this? Hi guys, my name is Fadil and I'm a FIDE-rated chess player in Nigeria, Africa. And on this channel, I'll be showing you my tournament games, analysis, just my training in general in becoming a very strong chess player. That's my journey. My journey is to become a very strong chess player here in Nigeria, crossing the Elo or even gaining a title, a chess title. And maybe one day I can become first Nigeria Grandmaster, because my country in Nigeria we don't have a Grandmaster yet. But let's see, we don't know. Alright, so for today's video, I played in an over the board tournament, a rapid tournament, and I want to give you guys a recap. So the 20 plus 3 seconds, was it 20 plus 3 or 20 plus 5 seconds increment? And getting to the event, I got there late, so I could not record my first round, but I won the game eventually. I had just 3 minutes left. So the 7-round recap, 7-round tournament, so I was on 1/1 after the first round. So in the second round, which is what I'm showing you guys right now, I was paired with let me say, the top seed. This is a very strong player, his name is Tolu Okemakinde. He's one of Nigeria's strong player, if not even part of the top 5 strong player here we have in Nigeria. And he's a title player, he's a candidate master. So in this second round, this was time for me to really show my strength, to really test whether I have what it takes to compete. So let's go. In this round, my opponent started the game with I was black, and this is my full name, Fadila Ikomi Yusuf, and I have a rating of FIDE rating of 1800, and my opponent was white, the Candidate Master Tolu Okemakinde, and he has an ELO of over 2000, 2100. And our opponent started with the move e4. And right here, I don't want to say I was skeptical or I don't know what to actually play, but I just told myself that let me just play with something I'm comfortable with. Let me not go with too much complications. I'm playing a candidate master, someone that is more experienced than me. Let me play a position that I know that I'm used to. I'm used to the structure, and which is the French defense. And that's why I played e6. And then my opponent played d4, and I played d5, which is the normal standard move in the French defense. And yet there are so many moves. You can either play the advanced variation, the exchange variation, we have the classical variation, or either the Tarrasch variation. And my opponent went with the advanced variation, and I responded with c5, standard normal move. My opponent also played c3 just to guide his pawn. I developed my knight. My opponent developed his bishop. Now, developing this bishop, which I found weird in the match, because it allowed me to play, or it allowed the idea of queen b6. And the idea of queen b6 is that though I'm putting pressure on this line here, and I'm also putting pressure on b2. That's just the whole idea. And I thought, okay, is this move not weird? But I also read somewhere in a course that when this bishop developed to e3, we have this idea of bringing our knight to reroute the knight to this place, to this square, just to take this bishop, which was something. So I had those two options: either to develop my queen here, either to develop my queen to b6 to go with this plan of putting pressure on the b2 pawn, or to reroute my knight to this square and to eventually trade it off with this bishop. So I went to the second choice, and that's why I played this knight move. And here my opponent developed his knight also, and I developed my I continued my plan just to play this knight here and trade it off with this bishop. Here my opponent attacked my knight. Okay, he's trying to tell me what's the aim. Do I want to take? Because if I don't take this bishop now, his plan is to take the knight and give me this double pawn. So at this point, I started thinking in this moment, and I found this that if I take the bishop immediately, and my opponent takes back, and let's say later on in the game I end up taking this d4 pawn, then my opponent has the idea of taking back with this pawn just to create this block of pawns, and it's going to be very bad for me because I still have a dark square bishop, which is not going to is going to limit the movement of my dark square bishop. So I thought, okay, why don't I first trade this pawn? So after my opponent takes back, I can always take the bishop, which was my idea. And that is why I took this pawn, though the engine does not like it that much. And after my opponent took, I took the knight, and my opponent took back, and I was happy with this structure. I was happy because yes, I'm able to force this double isolated pawn from my opponent, but in doing so, my opponent has an open file when he castles, so the rook will get active. But still, I was still doing fine here. I bought my knight, I attacked this bishop, and the idea of attacking this bishop is that in if I castle, this bishop with the combination of these knights bringing the queen to c2 can always cause problem in this diagonal. There's even the idea of in some lines the idea of Greek gift, where the bishop can take, knight takes, the queen coming, and some checkmate ideas. So I wanted to remove this bishop away from this diagonal, or to see if my opponent is going to allow me trade off this bishop. And why b5? Why here it does not really look good? Because I'm going to trade off my should I say my bad bishop for his own very strong bishop. So here my opponent went bishop e2, not giving me the chance to trade off the bishop, and I developed my bishop. My opponent castled. I castled also, and in this position my opponent also developed his knight. These are just standard normal move, just normal development. And I also developed my bishop. My opponent brought his rook to the open file, and here in this position I really did not know what to do. I was thinking, should I play either a6, or should I bring my rook to challenge the open file too, or should I play f6? And I just ended up playing a6, and the idea of a6 is that I don't want just to control any piece from coming to this b5 square. That's just the idea of a6, control any piece from coming to b5 square, and it's more of like a waiting move too, to see what my opponent wants to do. My opponent kicked my knight away, I went back, and here he played b4. In the game, I felt this b4 move, it was somehow tricky, because what's the idea behind b4? Is it to play b5? I don't think b5 works here, because I'll just take, and after my opponent takes back, this pawn is always going to be hanging. This pawn is always going to be free here. So I knew that b5 is not going to be b5, and is it to play a4? I'll just take, this is just going to be a free pawn. So b4 here, I felt b4 is not the best move in this position, because I just felt that's not what the position needed. But in the long run, my opponent is also advancing on the queen side, which can also help him later on in the game. Then I told myself that, okay, what's the next thing to play? And I learned that in the French, when you are playing this type of advanced variation, or sometimes even in the classical variation, the two main move, or the two pawn break we have in the French, is this c5 and this f6. So since I've done c5, the next is to open f6. That's why I played f6 here. My opponent took, I captured with the bishop, and here my opponent developed his bishop on this diagonal, because now my knight is no longer there, so the bishop can cause problem. Now the whole problem is on this h7 pawn. That's the whole idea. My opponent is planning to bring his queen to c2, his knight, put more pressure on this pawn, and cause some probably some checkmate ideas. And here I responded with bishop e8. And the idea of bishop e8 is, okay, now I see this idea coming from my opponent, queen c2, putting more pressure on this diagonal. So I need to bring my bishop just to fight against the light square. Since I still have a light square bishop, fight against the light square, and my bishop will be more happy on this diagonal. That's why I played bishop e8. And then my opponent continued his plan, queen c2. And yeah, I just played g6 just to prevent, because this pawn was hanging. Now you can see the idea of this bishop. This bishop supports the pawn push, the g6. Now there's no idea of any sacrifice the end to sack this bishop. And then my opponent played queen a1. And the idea of queen a1 is simple. The idea is just that it wants to put pressure on this. Sorry, it wants to put pressure on this file, on this diagonal, which I responded with bishop f7. And now the idea of bishop f7 that okay, I'm just reinforcing the diagonal to telling the queen, okay, what do you want to do there? And then my opponent's brought back his bishop, and yeah, I saw the idea that the idea is to play this bishop b3 and also play this move e4. So you will have control over this diagonal because after I take on e4, this diagonal is going to be very, very open. And just to try and break open the center, which I thought for a while here, and I decided on playing e5. Now e5 might look like a mistake because my opponent's plan is always is happy if this diagonal open. But I said if my opponent can take, my plan was if my opponent take this pawn on e5, I have this move d6, d4, sorry, to okay open up this position, but it will be on a tempo to the queen, and d6 is going to be a tempo to the knight, so it will be like a fork on two pieces. So that was just my plan there. But my opponent here, he played rook d1, which I felt was, should I say, was a mistake, because this rook d1, his idea was once I take this pawn, once he takes this pawn, he's going to have this open file for the rook. But I could close down the position just with e4. And this e4, I felt e4 was a very good move. Now the engine is agreeing with that. That e4 was a very, very good move because now this rook can never get this open file again. And now it's also a tempo on this knight. And my opponent made a crucial mistake here with knight d2. In this position, I think my opponent spots the move because he almost rushed. He took his knight, he took his hand, wanted to take the knight and play, but he paused for a while. Then he saw a critical move there, but in the long run, he spent up to 5 minutes thinking of just that one move. But in the long run, he played knight d2. And this was my chance in the game. Now, in this position, there is a very brilliant move I want you guys to find. A very brilliant move that wins, should I say wins on the spot, or that gives me an edge in this position. And unfortunately for me, I did not find the move. Yes, I was so overjoyed there, I did not even look at the move. But the move here is just this brilliant knight sack. Now, what's the idea between this knight sack? The thing is that after my opponent recaptures, I'm going to also capture back with a check, and this knight is also going to fall. So what did I gain in the end? I gained these 2 pawns that was there. I gained the 2 pawns there. But in this position, I did not really calculate this line at all. And that was what my opponent saw. Because he told me after the game that I just missed this knight sack and I was very, very pained. So what I did there was I noticed that there's a weakness here on e3. Then I asked myself that why can't I just attack the weakness? And which was what I did. I played this bishop move, and that's why the engine is saying it as a miss, because this knight sack would have given me a very, very, very good position. So now, but the idea of this bishop move is I'm attacking the pawn on e6. How will he defend it? Which my opponent played rook e1. Rook e1 looks good, but I don't know why the engine is saying probably he should have just given me this pawn and play king h1. But me, I felt in the game, I felt rook e1 was good. At least it's defending this pawn for now. But and I asked myself, how can I put more pressure on this e3 pawn? And I saw this knight maneuver. My knight's coming here, here, and here to put pressure on the e3 pawn, which is what I played. Remember my knight there, and my opponent brought his bishop to this file just to support this file. Sorry, just to support this file. Now, if you look at, you have in this diagonal, my d5 pawn is very, very weak. My opponent has one, two, three pieces attacking my d5 pawn. And I also have some pieces defending into this one, two, three. So in this position, I should have not rushed this move because this was the, should I say, the turning point of this game. As at this position, engine evaluate this as minus 1.71. So me playing a CM, I had a good position. Even in the middle game, I had a good position. But just one move, guys, one move changed the whole narrative of this game. Now, what should I have played here? I should have just maybe brought my rook, attack this knight, because this knight is one of the threats to this my e4, e5 pawn. So I could have just brought my rook to attack this knight, and whenever this knight move, then I can now play my queen move. But in this position, I made a very, very big blunder, which was queen d6. And in this position, my opponents found a very, very, very nice move. The move that destroyed that just crushed my position entirely, which was this brilliant knight sack. Now, what's the idea of this knight sack? The idea is just simple. It is a fork. My queen is hanging, my bishop is hanging, and there is no way I can protect the two pieces at once. There is no way. Queen here does not work. There is no way, and it's just a fork. So if I end up taking back and my opponent take back, he's going to also win my official. So it's like the reverse of what happened. You know, earlier on I had a case of winning the 2 pawns with a brilliant move like this. But now my opponent found it. So I was really, really pained in this position. I was like, what just happened? Just one move and everything changed. So I took, my opponent took back. And since I'm eventually going to lose this bishop, I just took this pawn with check. When my opponents were captured, and there I spent a lot of time thinking what was the best move. Because if I just maybe let's say retreat, there's always this pressure on this diagonal. This pressure on this diagonal is something that, and bringing the rooks in, is something that I did not know how to control. So I thought, okay, why don't I first take this bishop, having a tempo on this queen, and if this queen eventually take my bishop, I just have this queen d5. So everything is safe. That was my whole plan. And I took the bishop. I thought queen captures back was first, because I was like, that's what my opponent has to take. I just took a bishop. So my opponent has to take me back. But I forgot that after knight takes, this rook is also going to be attacking my knight. Which was what happened. My opponent just took my queen. And in this place, I thought all my idea was I was down a piece. Like I'm going to lose an official in this game. I had forgotten earlier that I've also taken my opponent's bishop. If I had just calmed down, count the material, probably everything would have still been better, but I was just pain. I was shaking my head, saying that what just happened right now. My position has lost. And I was so I lose all hope in this position. But I ended up taking the queen, my opponent took the knight. Now if you count the material, I'm just a pawn down. I'm just a pawn down here. So it's not something I should have just given up easily. I should have still fought for something. But in this position, guys, I press the clock, stretch my hand, and I resign. Because I thought I was a piece down. I thought I was an official down. In this position, my own mind was I was an official down. Something funny happened when I pressed the clock, stretched my hand. My opponent asked me again, have you resigned? I said yes. Then when I looked at the position again, I noticed that I was just a pawn down. So why am I taking it as a big deal? It's still something that I should have not given up easily, which was what really pained me a lot. I was really, really pained. I did not understand what just happened. Oh my! my intention was I was a piece down. So I was an official down. That was what I was thinking. But not knowing it was just a pawn. I still have something to fight for. I could have brought my bishop back just to protect this pawn. And my opponent cannot take it. Like, okay, if I bring my bishop back, my opponent can't take this pawn. It will be a mistake. Because after this knight take, I just have this brilliant move with rook c7, a7. And the idea of rook a7 is this is just a pin. I'm threatening to take the knight. What can my opponent do? I'm not really seeing any good move. Let's say he plays it to attack my bishop. So in case if I take, I just have this move, attacking his own bishop. So if he comes here, I'll come back here. So I don't really see, and this in this position it will just be like a draw, which the engine is saying is correct. So I should have not given up that easily. Though the position is crushing in a way too, because this d4 pawn is just a pass pawn. It's just to push. But still, I gave up so easily in this position, and that's how I lost. That was how I lost. Man, it was tough. They were playing, but playing someone higher rated than me, and even having a nice position is something that having a nice position. Yeah, my position was still very good at this point. Only if I had found this night sack in this place. If I had found this night sack, I might. Who knows? I might have defeated the CM. But unfortunate for me, I didn't. And my opponent found this brilliant night sack, and from there, I just lost. I resigned on this one. So guys, stay tuned for round three. That's going to be more epic because I played a very wild game in that match. Stay tuned. See you guys. Get out of here.